Chattisfying.
Excellent. Oh, I love it. Well, shall we move on then to section 2? So section 2 is the debate, really, where we each give our thoughts and opinions on a topic, and then we'll start sort of counterpointing potentially. Chat can sort of drop their own thoughts in as well. If we see anything particularly thought-provoking, we'll mention it. They are normally quite broad topics. The topic today is speedrunning, as we've got someone who speedruns and is good at it. So we'll let you go first if we can, Boney. So speedrunning, go.
Yes.
Talk to us about...
in terms of speedrunning, we can go pretty broad, as you say. It could be the exposure it's had over the years, right? We've had all these marathons going on, raising money for charity and whatnot. It's been one of those things that really brought into it. But there's also, in terms of, I suppose, a bit more deeper into speedrunning, like what is speedrunning, what constitutes a speedrun, when you're actually able to speedrun a game, what are you allowed to do in speedruns, right? But at the same time, we've also been seeing cheating in speedrunning, right? Like one of the big ones was Dream coming up on the Minecraft stuff, and people are like, oh wait, they've been like cheating, what, and causing all this like a ruckus going on. It's I don't know, it's one of those things pretty broad. It's also been one of places where the Me Too movement really it really shown there were quite some people actually that turned out to be doing some definitely unsavory stuff at these events that are going on, right? These physical events. We can go pretty broad. If there is one thing, I suppose I don't know if we could talk about it. It's like the situation of speedrunning being online all the time, right? It used to be one of those things where we had these events, right? Whether it's a ESA, AGDQ, or UKSG is another example. And these are all, they're all speedrunning events, and you're able to go physically, you're able to see each other, you're able to hang out. These are these moments in time where these people you normally only see online, only speak to online, you only share strats with, or you see their stream doing this world record and whatnot, you finally get to see each other. It's just completely gone now, right? Because you can't. You just can't. It's I don't know. It's one of those tough things. I'm not sure if I want to go somewhere with that though. That's the issue. Because if you were to be invited to one of these events, right, to actually be able to watch these live, like what would you think? What would be your go-to? Like, you go in as a reporter one day, try to figure out what's going on at the speedrunning event.
I don't know. I mean, it's slightly marred by the fact that I kind of already know partially what it's about.
Right.
But I have no idea. Like, I think it's great that there's a community. It's always great that there's a community around something people can get really enthusiastic about. Because I remember, obviously, you went to ESL a couple of years ago before all this happened.
Right. Yeah.
Back when we were actually allowed to meet people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was interesting. Like, you got to, like you say, you got to meet people that you'd normally only see online. It's quite similar to the kind of the Twitch meetups in many ways.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a bit more specific than that, in that, like, a Twitch meetup is just people that stream, whereas speedrunning is a bit more of a limited kind of remit. Although even then, there's still a huge amount, because you could speedrun almost any game,
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. It's whenever it's like finding an end, right? What is the end? When do you define something as done? Which is it depends on the game. It totally depends on the game. That's why you have all these different rulings and whatnot, right? In terms of cheating and when are you allowed to do a glitch, right? Glitching is one of those things that always is a gray area, because one, gaming community might be like, oh yeah, I use all the glitches in the world and make sure to break the game as much as you can to make sure you squeeze out that 1 millisecond.
Hmm.
Whereas the other are like, yeah, don't even think about it. What are you doing? This is not how we do things around here.
Disqualified.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting one. I do feel maybe that would be interesting. In terms of speedrunning, I always find there's two camps. Whenever it comes to like this interest into it in terms of types of speedruns, it's either speedruns that are completely played as the developer intended or totally broken.
Yeah.
Totally, just totally broken.
Yeah.
And I've always like found it in terms of my speedrunning, right, to try to stray away from like really breaking a game. At some point, I personally feel that when you're speedrunning a game, you're playing that game, right? You're playing that because you want to play that game. If, for example, Ocarina of Time has been broken to no end, where people can basically write code to some extent, right? Like actually force the game to do certain things because you know how to interact with certain objects and do the specific backflip and whatnot. And now you go through the door and here you are in Ganon's Tower.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
At some point, I feel like it loses the spirit of playing a game and just simply chasing records.
Yeah.
I found that always to be one of those things that I tend to discuss with people where they're like, I just don't want to watch speedruns because they're always doing these crazy things and glitching stuff out and not playing it in the way that I like to play it. So I don't think it's, like legit. But it's one of those, yeah, it's a gray area stuff. Some are very obvious, right? The cheating, if you're just putting in mods that make things super easy for you, then not good. But
I definitely
it's
remember
tricky. Like,
hearing...
how far can you go in breaking a game?
No, exactly. I definitely remember hearing about you talking about cheating. I remember hearing about someone. I can't remember what they were called or even what game they were playing, but they speedrun on YouTube.
Right.
And they actually had done this thing where they'd sped up the footage by a really small amount. So it was enough that nobody noticed, but it still obviously made the time significantly better because it was quite a long game.
Yeah.
And they didn't get found out for the longest time until someone was like, hold on a second. And like, someone I would assume that probably knows the game really well. I was like, that's not quite right. I don't know. It's quite interesting, isn't it? When you can kind of, especially because it's almost entirely, like you say, especially now during COVID, it's entirely online.
Yeah.
So it kind of opens things up for that, because you could not do that even on Twitch, but you could not do that. So it's definitely like face to face if you were actually there with someone.
No.
It'd be completely impossible. So it is kind of interesting where it's kind of like, it's sort of a regulated thing, but it's also kind of not.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It really depends on how popular a game is. Like Minecraft, it's simply one of the biggest speedrunning games at this point in time, and they ask a lot, especially after like again the Dream stuff came out. Initially, it was simply like giving your log file, I believe, in your save file, so they could check like when you actually created it, that it is actually a random seed and you didn't just practice it beforehand, right? And just get all this information, and they exactly know like, oh, this is loading in, and we see this little thing happening. Ooh, that doesn't really make sense. That's not supposed to happen. They're really dialed in, and it went even further with the Dream stuff, because they're like, just send us like your file and whatnot, like your folder, and we really want to dive into it. But with other games that may not be as popular, just like, yeah, just submit it, give us video, and it's good, cool. And yeah, people would never realize that there might be cheating going on. It's very dependent on popularity, and it's, I suppose, a nice thing that it's not like there's some governing body that's telling everyone, oh, but this is how you're supposed to play games and this is how you're not supposed to play games. A good example of where that was the case was Twin Galaxies, and that kind of with the Pac-Man records and Donkey Kong records and whatnot. And now it turns out that like a couple of them were actually cheating all along, and they were just using, at least allegedly, I don't want to get sued because they've been suing everyone.
Yes, they have. Yeah, I know who you're on about. Yeah.
They allegedly have been using this as a way to simply, like, gained this popularity, portray themselves as the best gamer in the world, at least like one of them specifically, and then like the squad around them, and like verification was done by their friends all the time, whereas other players had to do all these extra things, loopholes, and you know, like, no, you need to do this, you need to do it on this board, you need to, whereas other people are like, oh, you just have a videotape that is super grainy, no problem, you're in. Very, you know, like ever since I believe Jace Hall, he overtook Twin Galaxies, and Twin Galaxies were very much on like no glitching whatsoever, and that used to be also the hub for like speedrunning records. That is not the case anymore, and because people, you know, they were like, we know how to go faster, but we are not allowed to go faster because this governing body is telling us we can't do this.
Yeah.
In terms of where speedrunning is now, like 2021, and not having this organization overlooking you, and simply the community saying like, hey, we like this, we don't like this, or we should have a separate category for this because it's simply too fast. I don't know, it makes it a lot easier, but perhaps it's a lot easier as well for cheaters to simply, you know, get in and put their records in just to have a bit of clout.
Indeed. So, what got you into speedrunning? Was it a wish to continually play a game and just optimize basically your playthrough, or was it something else?
I mean, initially, like, it was watching an AGDQ that like gave me like I suppose planted the seed of me wanting to like, oh, this seems like something I could, you know, like, you know, chasing down these records, and you know, like replaying a game over and over again in and of itself doesn't sound exactly like the most appealing thing ever, but I don't know, I just really enjoyed the idea behind like really mastering a game and really understanding it, especially at that time. Like, still StarCraft 2 was very much, you know, on my head. So the idea of just, you know, being the fastest, it was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So that kind of drew me in, and it's been like my outlet in terms of being competitive. Like, as you said earlier, right, Dota 2, and I played CSGO as well, and I found like games took too long and the investment and whatnot. And
yeah.
not so much with speedrunning. And with speedrunning, I, you know, like, I'm able to fulfill that competitive itch.
Yeah.
And not have to necessarily worry about, oh, you know, I'm still setting aside some time, but I know how much time I'm setting up. I'm not dependent on anyone else. Nobody's dependent on me. It's also one of the reasons why I quit WoW, right? Because with raiding, I did a lot of raiding.
Yeah.
But you're dependent on everyone, and people are dependent on you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is one of those things that's nice about speedrunning. It's like, you know, like you're getting into boxing, and, you know, like, yeah, I guess you need a partner to spar with, but, you know, you're the guy boxing. There's not an entire team that's hoping that, you know, you'll be there for practice. You know, I feel like in that sense, it's pretty similar. You know, like Dota 2 being your football, and your, I don't know, StarCraft 2 being your chess, I guess.
Basically,
right?
what you're saying is you just want all the glory to yourself.
Oh,
you don't want your
yeah,
team to help.
definitely.
Nah, yeah, give me all the shiny stuff. Yeah.
Just put my name on the trophy. That's it. There's. What do you mean? There's more space? No, just write it bigger. Bigger.
Is that Boney with a C or with an M? Sorry, which one is it? There we go.
Exactly.
See, from my perspective, like, I don't really do speedrunning. It's not, and I like I said, I've watched it and all that kind of stuff. I think for me, as an outsider to the whole scene as such, I think it's more about getting the game done legit. You know,
Right.
if you happen to find a quirk in the game, then okay, we've all used those, whether speedrunning or not, you know. But to purposely put them in, I don't think that justifies a legit speedrun for me. Is my kind of thing.
Right.
Like, that's why I enjoyed the Minecraft ones, because they have so many different subcategories. You got the random seeds, you have the pre-generated things, and, you know, you do this, you have your own routes and all that kind of stuff. You do your thing. That's it. That's great. That's glorious. But I generally I think if I was to ever be speedrunning, it would be to try and improve. Well, obviously it's to try and improve your time, but you still got to enjoy the game. But ultimately, it's playing the game to its fullest and getting to the end. You know, it's not so much completionist; it's getting there to the end. Because like for example, Fable or something like that, I'm not going to go do the side quest because they do my tits in, and I don't really want to play with the bumblebees that are going to do my head in over in the corner there. You know, I want to get to the end as quick as I possibly can, but still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when does for my question for you then would be, when does it become more important for you to beat your time than to enjoy the game as quickly as possible?
I think that's the $1 million
Um,
question, though, isn't it?
Yeah, because definitely at some point, I mean, I have found myself in like a situation where I'm like, oh, I really need to like, like, you tend to set these goals for yourself, I suppose, when speedrunning. Like the optimal time at some point, right? People have played it and you've played it and you realize you make some mistakes here and there, usually due to programs like Live Split or whatnot, like any other relative ones. You know what your possible best time is, and so because of that, it's very easy to get yourself get led by the fact that, oh, I could save up to 15 seconds on this section if I just get this one section right and then do everything else right. I have a new record. It's very easy to get into that, and from time to time, I do let that drive me. It sometimes I just feel like, because I'm either it's because it allows me to get to first place or whatnot, or I beat my rival or something along those lines. Rivalries definitely fuel the will to play. But I do feel like it's like there needs to still be some sort of enjoyment in terms of like the game itself providing it. I don't think it's necessarily that first time playing that type of enjoyment. That isn't really the enjoyment that I get out of it. It's more like like perfecting these levels. I feel like Super Cable Boy is a great example due to the fact that these levels are not that long. In general, I'd say like not until like the final world you can beat a level in between like 5 and 15 seconds, right? And you're done. And so because of that, because these levels are pretty short, it is amazingly well crafted in a way to just ask you to optimize this, right? Maybe I use this wall to jump over here and then slide under here, or perhaps I do it completely different. I go under and over, and you tweak away and you chip away at just figuring out some form of faster movement. And it becomes more of that. It becomes more like initially puzzle solving, and figuring out, okay, what is best. And then it comes to execution and really like, like getting to the mastery of the game itself. It's still, like the game itself, playing it casually is still fun, though, I might gravitate to knowing what I know from the speedrunning side of things. But it's it just becomes different. It's just a different perspective. And if some point I'm like, okay, the challenge is gone, or like this is just getting too repetitive, which might happen because I don't know, there's some like one trick or one level that just does not click, does not mesh, or is very inconsistent, is one of the words that is used a lot. It just, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm done with it. I have tried like many other games and trying to get into speedrunning of it, and I get turned off because of it. But when I do stick with a game, I do find like that challenge period for me at least is like 6 months, and then after those 6 months, I'm like, all right, time for a new one.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Okay, so here's one then. So, Mello, I've seen you play your Zelda games, and I know you love your Zelda games, and I know you've been trying to do semi kind of informal speed running to a degree. You were doing something a few weeks back, and you were in like this dungeon. There was like quicksand around and stuff like that. But you mentioned like you were going through a certain point, and it's like it was going to be your favorite dungeon that you do. So does that still come into reflection in your mind when you're speed running that this is your favorite dungeon? So obviously you want to get through as quick as possible. But for me personally, for example, like I really love Dead Mines in World of Warcraft. It's my favorite thing. I wouldn't want to speed run that. I like savoring those moments, which then kind of defuncts the whole speedrunning aspect. So is it more of a shame that you can't enjoy and savor those favorite parts of your game because you're speedrunning? Or do you still enjoy the fact that you got through it quickly and therefore you still enjoyed that section of the game as such?
That's actually quite interesting. That's actually kind of something I was going to mention is I think a while ago, because I used to really dislike speedrunning because the whole point is like I want to see the game being played, and when you're speedrunning without glitches, you're kind of getting that, which is fine. But when you're speedrunning with the glitches, the whole point of glitches is you're skipping the game. And my initial, I mean, I've seen a lot of games speedrun now, but my initial like foray into like finding out about speedrunning was Ocarina of Time, my favorite game of all time. So I'm sitting there like, why would I want to watch this? They're literally skipping all my favorite parts of the freaking game. But now that I've played it so many more times, especially now that I've started randomizing it, and I've played almost as many randomizers as I've played the base game over my life. You do get to the point where you're like, I've seen it so many times now, I don't feel like I need to see it again. And therefore, skipping it doesn't feel quite so egregious anymore. You see what I mean?
Does that mean then you're not so much enjoying the game, you're just enjoying getting to the end then? It's that satisfaction and that, the adrenaline rush of finishing the game.
That's where,
more so than the actual game itself.
That's where, for me at least, speedrunning and randomizing are completely separate, because I don't find speedrunning to do it at all fun. But because randomizing is a completely different experience, like every time you roll a seed, you're basically creating a new game for yourself within the confines of, the base game. So the fun is in figuring it out and beating the seed. Basically, that's where the fun lies, not necessarily in the base game, although obviously you're still enjoying the mechanics of the original game and the locales of the original game and all that kind of thing. But that's kind of it, where the actual original game, in many ways, kind of already gone at the moment you even start randomizing, in a way. I don't know if that's fair. I mean, what do you think about that, BoneyC?
Yeah, I mean, to definitely touch on the enjoyment side of things. Yeah, like the appreciation of the game itself, going through it and whatnot. I feel like that is, at least with classics, it's just something that kind of sticks. It's usually like music, right, or graphic, like some I don't know, some cool sword or whatnot, right? Those are the things that stick, but not necessarily the game as a whole. I experienced that. I've had that experience. I know what it was like. And it's one of the, like, I know there are some people who like to just learn a game from the get-go because they know, like, I don't know, Super Mario 64, super popular speedrunning game. I'm just going to learn how to speedrun it. Never played it normally. And they just know how to do the speedrun because they just want to do the speedrun. But for me, it's been like, yeah, I want to get that experience first. I want to make sure that I know what it's like to just play through the game and just enjoy it. And where I do try to avoid as many glitches as I can in my speedruns that I do, as long as it permits within the category and all that. I've had that experience. I've enjoyed it. Now I'm gonna try and experience something else within it. I think it's, for me at least, it's more that I accept that it's past. I've accepted it's happened. And I can look back at it and, like, oh, I remember really, like discovering this one twist in the story, or, like figuring out how to really solve this dungeon. And then with speedrunning, it's like, let's do something else with it. Let's create a different experience. I think it's more that if I feel like that is the best way I could explain it. Yeah.
So would that be, for example, like, okay, so you're doing a speed run, you've played the game before and sped run it, and is sped running a term? I'm going to use it. Sped run it. And you can see that with your whole like log of times and chapters and weird stuff that you have down the screen. I have no idea how you set that up. It's amazing when you do that kind of thing. But you're like, you can see that you're not going to do it this time. You're not going to beat it. Do you call it quits, or do you still go for the end because you enjoy the game?
Ooh, this is definitely one of those speedrunning experiences. Like, some speedrunners like to go into like this reset hell where any minor mistake, instant reset. Don't even think about it. Just throw it away. Like, accept it. Whereas some others are like treating it as a baby and just like, no, I got to care for it. I got to make sure for it. I know I messed up, but I'm just going to keep going. And like, they just happen. Which is, like, I suppose, the two extremes. And obviously everybody is somewhere in between. And me personally, I do find that I tend to like finish any of my runs. Like, personally, whenever I'm speedrunning a game, I can, I spend like about 2 to 3 hours speedrunning the game, I would say. And it depends on how long that speedrun is, how often I'm able to run it. And after that, I'm kind of burned out. I'm kind of like, okay, time for something else. I do focus on making sure I do all the things right. And because of that, I tend to favor finishing a run, even when I know I'm not going to make it, simply due to wanting to just getting runs done, which isn't always as good if you're really focusing on times. If you're really focusing on times, yeah, you got to reset. You got to reset whenever you make a mistake that you know is not going to make it. You got to reset when you know you're not going to make that time, because you're putting in time into something that's not going to fulfill that goal of yours.
Plus, you could also look back at your footage or something like that and see where you went wrong to it. It's a learning experience as well, that kind of stuff. So
no,
it could be
definitely
an educational thing for you as well, then, to finish it, not just because you love the game or anything.
Yeah, it takes a bit of the pressure off as well. And it, you know, like if I do mess up later on, I'm like, it was already dead anyway. So might as well maybe try something out. Maybe try this one little tactic that you had in your head and just, I'm already in this place anyways.
Yeah.
Might as well mess around with it. And it's definitely taking that opportunity in that situation. But I know plenty of people who are just like, no, they're just like, they might even get frustrated, right? And just reset. And, you know, sometimes a bit too early where it's like, oh, you still could have recovered. They're like, no, it's not perfect, so I want to keep going. It's definitely like speedrunning in and of itself is something that is great for anybody who is a perfectionist, because you gotta be perfect. And I mean, I hope you don't get too mad then, but yeah, resetting happens a lot. I just try to avoid it as much as I can because I know I'm gonna get bored at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got any more, Hippo? Any more thoughts?
No. I generally want to know how you set up those like timer things down the side of the screen. And I assume you have like a button on your keyboard you press and then it does the next chapter. But are they set to your times and preferences, or would they be game specific chapter points that, like, you know, with Spyro or something like that, that you'd be like, this is the next stage that I know I need to get through and stuff like that? Or because you could look at certain games and go like, there's hundreds of like segments that you could separate if you really wanted to narrow down your time cutoffs. But like, or is it more like you go onto that speedrunning website thing and you go, okay, so this is the category, this is the category, this is the category, and then you lead it up there, and then you know you're going for their targets as such to where the time zone criteria hits. Because ultimately, it's getting to the end of the game, isn't it? Is the key? So where do you put your chapter points?
I mean, technically, yeah, you could be just fine if you just literally add a time up and just done whenever you're done with the game. I mean, it's like a multitude of reasons, I suppose. Like, I mean, how it works, right? It's a program, and I can just I can manually set those, and it records all the times when I push the button to like, okay, move to the next section, move to the next section, move to the next section, which is obviously great to check how I do in certain sections, because I might just have that one timer, but I don't really realize when exactly I maybe made a mistake or where I did amazingly well, and I should keep doing that. So for that reason, it's extremely nice to just set these sections. And where I set these sections is usually like 99% of the time is arbitrary. It's just wherever I feel it makes sense, whenever I might have time to push the button, or whenever an event happens in the game and we can automate that. Right, there are definitely some technical people within the speedrunning community and as a whole. And they could just create a automatic splitter that detects whether something appears on screen, and we know this means you achieved something, so we can move you on to the next section, or it's
like key cutscenes or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, because it realizes, oh yeah, this means you just beat this, because we always know you're gonna get to this point. Sometimes it's nicer when games expose their events, and we can use that to like, oh, event level beaten happened, sweet, let's send that to the splitter, and it happens. And like there's like a few games where you don't really have that freedom in where you want them. Obviously with an auto splitter, it's very dependent on this one event happening, so you really got to make sure you don't mess around too much with it, unless you know how to auto split stuff and make that, which I don't. I'm very happy there's people who know how to do it, and I just yoink it, and I'm like, sweet, thanks, I'm gonna use that now. But there have been, like, Spyro has been one where you had to use an auto splitter, I know that. And so because of that, you had to make sure you had the sections. They didn't really force you like, oh, you have to play this level, but you have to make sure, like, okay, if you beat a level, make sure you have it set up in the auto splitter that you beat the level, and we use that to check whether or not things are on the up and up. Also due to the way the time works, there's 3 different times you have to record for Spyro because of the way it works, and
Wow.
you know, PCs being faster and slower and all that. It's a whole
Interesting.
ordeal. It's a whole
Yeah.
ordeal.
It's interesting, isn't it? I was just gonna sort of provide my own opinion really on the whole thing because, like, I feel like I've had kind of a bit of a tumultuous kind of experience with speedrunning because definitely, like I mentioned earlier, when I first was introduced to the idea of it, it was Ocarina of Time, and I really just didn't like it. I didn't see the point. I was like, if you're gonna play such a wonderful, like, beautiful game, why are you just gonna skip so many parts of it? Like, what's the point in doing that? Like, why not just play the game properly? And I actually did a thing where I kind of I didn't consider it speedrunning at the time. It was just playing the game quickly, where I played the game with no glitches because I didn't know any and I didn't want to. I just basically passed as good as I could, and
Yeah.
you know, killed the enemies as quickly as I could, and essentially played the game as quickly as I could, just playing it normally. And that's kind of where I keep my level. Really, for the longest time, I was like, it's not, I never really saw it as speedrunning, although it technically is, isn't it? Really, I
It's a
mean,
personal
yeah.
speedrun, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah.
more than anything
Yeah.
else.
But
I
it's
would
just
say,
it's
yeah.
just playing the game quickly. That's all I was doing, right? And I always just hated speedruns because I was just like, what's the point? Just play the game properly. Because that's what I want to see. That's what I want to experience. Especially like, you know, a story game like Ocarina or Final Fantasy, for example. And there are people that speedrun Final Fantasy, like you mentioned. So for the longest time, I was just like, I don't like this. Like, as soon as someone was like, I'd be looking on, you know, the category, the Ocarina of Time category. As soon as I saw it was a speed run, I'm out. I'm not watching that. You could tell. You could immediately tell if they were somewhere that isn't the forest and they've only got 3 hearts. It's a speed
Oh,
run.
yeah.
This is before randomizers existed for it. So I was like, it's a speed run. I'm out. But since in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, since spending more time on Twitch, I've kind of come to appreciate speedrunning a little bit more. Because it can be fun watching someone who's genuinely good at the game kind of smash it. Do you know what I mean? Now,
Yeah.
I still don't like
like
glitches.
Boney, perhaps.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
He's a very good example of that. There's others as well that I could easily mention. You know, Stevie Blue as well, and also I know that Amart does Final Fantasy 9 and 10 as well. But yeah, I kind of got into the whole, like, the experience of watching someone, and I'm not that keen on watching, like, the practices and stuff. I think the practices it's very repetitive. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. But actually watching someone try and beat their time, and especially when it gets close and you're like, oh, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? That's fun to watch. That is content, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like my negative feeling towards speedrunning has very much, like, been, you know, sanded away now, and I can quite happily watch a speedrun now, especially if it's for a game where I at least vaguely know what's going on. And I'd still stipulate it needs to not really have too many glitches in it, because glitches, especially glitches that miss out massive parts of the game, again, you're kind of missing the point, even though you're speedrunning. Now, that's actually one of the reasons why I really enjoyed watching Final Fantasy X speedruns, because a Final Fantasy X speedrun is like 10 hours long.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can get under 10 hours, but
it's
it's not easy. And you're basically just playing the game quickly. Yeah. You're not really cutting anything out. And I like that, because you're still experiencing the game. I mean, okay, so you're skipping through all the dialogue, which is kind of the point of the actual game. But if, again, you've experienced the game enough times, because, again, Final Fantasy X, my second favorite game of all time, you already know all the plot beats, so you don't necessarily need to see that. And therefore, you can just kind of enjoy the gameplay. I love the fact that there's a community around it, and the community seems to be, you know, growing, and there are people that can really, like, enjoy it together. That definitely improves it. And at the end of the day, if you're enjoying doing it, then more power to you. So I think
definitely.
There was definitely an interesting thing you said earlier about the Hippo mentioned, is that where's the line between I want to get a faster time, and I actually want to freaking enjoy this, thanks. And that for me, because that's a really important distinction for me, because I always say if you're not enjoying it, don't freaking do it.
Right.
But at the same time, like,
I agree. Yeah.
That if you enjoy the outcome, I've got the best time. Well, then there's definitely a grey area there, and I think that is possibly you come across there, and you mentioned it earlier, Boney, and I wrote it down. The reason why maybe I don't like speedrunning and I probably will never get into it, it's competitive. I've never really been a particularly competitive person. And I think the reason why a lot of people probably like it is it's something where something that isn't normally competitive becomes competitive. And like you say, it's solo. So at the end of the day, if you fuck up, you've only got yourself to blame. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't like about team sports. I've definitely heard about people who really enjoyed football, but then stopped doing it because they'd occasionally F up and it would ruin it for the whole team and they'd feel too bad about it. And I know someone who was really good at football who literally stopped playing football because of that exact reason.
Right.
Yeah. So at least with this kind of thing, at the end of the day, if you mess up, you've only got yourself to blame. And I think that's a massive draw for competitive people at the end of the day. It's the competitive edge that draws people. And that's also the reason why I'm not and never have been massively interested in it. But watching people do it, especially if they're doing it well, is really, really good fun, or can be. I still think you need interaction. Obviously, there are going to be certain parts where you can't interact because you really need to focus in certain pinch points that are really
serious modes.
Yeah. But just watching the speedrun on its own, it's going to interest some people, but it's not going to interest me, which is why I really enjoy people that do the speedruns and still manage to keep up that, that constant talking, which is why I love people like BoneyC and Stevie Blue, and in chat, Bonnie, Noah. I just thought I'd give you a quick shout out there, and thank you so much for the raid, Cornish, and I really appreciate it, mate. Does anybody have anything more that you guys want to say? Any counterpoints to what we've just said? Anyone in chat?
I suppose just for me to like finish on, I suppose like one of the things you initially started on and obviously Chattisfying was just playing a game fast, right? Just playing it. It's one of those things where one of the things that might keep people back from speedrun is like when is a speedrun? What constitutes a speedrun? But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just playing a game fast, and it could be in any way that you want to do it. Whether it's like widely supported by the community or not doesn't matter, right? It just does not matter. I know there was one player in I believe Guacamelee 2 who figured out like, oh yeah, you could like save more time if you cleverly quit out of the game fully, right, and then boot it up, and then you can be a bit further and faster and like mess around with the in-game time, and that's what he really enjoyed. And I suppose, right, in some ways that is like setting a great time. He was very focused on setting that time. But yeah, I mean, if you just figure out how to beat the game fast, you're speedrunning, right? You're speedrunning, whether it's with glitches or without glitches. Obviously, you could discuss, right, if you feel like that is legit. But I don't know. At the end of the day, if you're interested in the game, you really enjoy a game, and you want to see it from a different perspective or enjoy it in a different way, try playing it fast. Just, like you can do it with any, you can set your own goals. There's someone who I know is like doing 120 stars in Terraria.
Yeah.
Which you normally would do in Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
But hey, you can collect 120 stars, so that's what he does. And like, there's no one else who does it, but he wants to do it. He wants to try that out. He wants to figure out the best way to get these stars.
Yeah.
And so that's what he does. And I don't know. I in that sense, I don't know. Like if at any point you were like, oh, I really want to try beat this game fast, just go for it, right? You are, like anybody can be a speedrunner. I feel like that is the biggest pro that it has. Doesn't matter which game, right? You can enjoy any game. You can speedrun it. There's like Sims Bingo. That's speedrunning. Just trying to complete a bingo card for The Sims.
That's ridiculous. I love that. That's fantastic. As actually, I'll just draw attention to something that Ferox said in chat earlier. He said he sometimes speedruns Breath of the Wild, but he's not good at it. I don't think you need to be good at it, because I think at the end of the day, what's most important is that you enjoy it. If you enjoy doing it, then who cares if you get a good time at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I guess I'm technically a speedrunner then, because I tend to try and push, for example, World of Warcraft. I try to push my character to the end level as quick as possible, which is what I've just done with TBC.
Yeah. And you beat your guild. You were the first in your guild. You
I
said
beat
it
my guild.
earlier.
Screw you, part-timers.
Got him.
Yeah, bitches. But I do. Like, for example, when Shadowlands came out in retail, I enjoyed it with my first character. and then I went as quick as I possibly could on my second character, and then my third and fourth, and then tried to tweak it. So technically, that's speedrunning.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
Fuck, I'm a speedrunner.
Definitely. Yeah.
I need one of
There
those
you go.
countdown clocks. That's what I need.
And time.
Amazing.
It's I don't know. I really like speedrunning. Whether it's like obviously the competitive, it could be with your guild, as you say, right? It can just be with friends. It could be the leaderboards. It could be races. But right, the one thing that drew me in was the whole like just seeing people showcase these games as well, right? Where it's not just about really going fast all the time, but sharing your game, the thing that you enjoy, with everyone else, and like having them experience it in the way that you do. Obviously, with speedrunning, that can be very specific to its speedrun itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, like there are still, I wouldn't say not as many speedruns, but definitely plenty of speedruns where people just play through the game and they just enjoy it and they just master it to a point where they're crushing your old childhood game because you really enjoyed Mega Man 2 and they just go through it while having a blast, still playing the game that's, you know, they've played thousands of times at this point. It's just, I don't know. There's just so many different facets to it that I don't know. I don't think I'm ever gonna not enjoy speedruns.
That's fantastic.
Chattisfying.